We ready? Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Certification Advisory Committee to order November 19th, 2024 at 9:09 a.m. So member, roll call. Deputy Director Duplanty,
Thank you, Chair Peasley. Chair Peasley,
present.
Dr. Cooperich,
Present, virtually.
Dr. Horn,
Present.
Janesh Pinnell, Member Janesh Pinnell. Okay. Member Lynn Slada,
Present.
Dr. Lighting,
Present.
Member Philpott,
Present.
Member Sotomayor, and Member Thybo.
Present.
Member Weber,
Present.
and I know Member Webkey is ill today.
Ooh.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item 1 is the Executive Director's report. Deputy Director Duplanty, do you have a report today?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair Peasley. Just a reminder of kind of where we're at. We're in possibly the final meeting of the endorsement review. Just a reminder that we're going to take your recommendations that you've been working on since the June meeting and combine them and put them forth to the board in one packet. So in the June meeting, you covered the general endorsement rule, the subject matter endorsements, elementary foreign language K-8 endorsement. In the August meeting, you covered early childhood, library media specialist, middle grades, driver's education, and cooperative education. In the September meeting, see, a lot of work. You've done the bilingual, the English as a second language, and the structured English immersion. Today, we're going to look at the reading endorsements, and we're also going to consider a new teacher leader endorsement. So again, following these last two endorsement considerations, we'll take that as one package, take all those recommendations. I already have a place set aside on the December board meeting just in case, and we'll package that all up and have the board consider that. And at the end of the meeting, I will kind of talk to you about what the rulemaking process is for the board in case you're not aware. And that's my report today.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to remind all those who are virtual members to unmute and turn on your camera when voting. Okay. Our next item is item 2 is the call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment on items on or not on today's agenda. Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any written comments?
Chair Peasley, I have not received any written comments.
All right, thank you very much. Item 3 is the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding the proposed amendments to R 72615H relating to reading specialist endorsements. Deputy Director Duplanty.
Thank you, Chair Peasley and members. Today, our format's going to change a little bit from the previous meetings where we presented all of the technical changes as once and then considered each endorsement. Since we only have really 2 endorsements on the plate today and they're a little bit different flavor, we're going to parse that out. And so we'll do a presentation on the reading endorsement and the changes and the background discussion of that, and then consider that item and that recommendation. And then following, we'll do the new teacher leader endorsement. So it's my pleasure today to hand this off to Jamie Wilbur, the Deputy Associate Superintendent for Certification Ed Prep and Educator Recruitment Retention, to present the changes, the proposed changes to the reading specialist endorsement.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start this morning with the reading specialists. And next slide. There we go. Thank you so much. And typically what we do is we go through the changes. As you've seen in the past, what we've done is we've gone through, we've had a lot of technical changes. In this particular presentation, what I have for you is I'm going to share some timelines with you and also the involvement of stakeholders. Because this is more of a substantial change as well as some technical changes, it's going to be a little bit of both. And so the format is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. The first slide is being shared with you is the stakeholder timeline. And so as you can see, what ADE did is we met with academic standards. We started this conversation back in November of 2023, and then again met with them in July of 2024. And the reason that we met with them is there needed to be some cleanup, and also there was some confusion between what was happening with current uh, the current endorsements as they stood, and also the new literacy endorsement. And as we proceed through this particular presentation, I'll be able to expand upon that just a little bit more. ADE and Academic Standards also met with external stakeholders in September of 2024, because not only did we feel that we needed to meet internally for some of the changes that we wanted to make, but we also felt like we needed to meet with external stakeholders around the state. And then we sent out a stakeholder follow-up survey for feedback after that September 2024 meeting. And just so you have a little bit of background, in July of 2021, there was that Senate Bill 1572, and that was there was an establishment of a new literacy endorsement, which required coursework or approved training in the science of reading and reading intervention. And so ADE saw that need to update the reading endorsement to align with this legislation. Okay, next slide, please. So with our external stakeholders, we ended up inviting 23 educators, 15 attended. There were teachers, literacy specialists, institutes of higher ed, superintendents, and student services who attended the stakeholder meeting. We had ADE Academic Services who joined us. This meeting was held virtually, and we chose to do it virtually so that we were not interrupting classroom instruction time. And we made sure to include rural remote districts, northern and southern districts were invited as well. And so what we did is we wanted to make sure that we were sharing some of the internal conversations that were taking place with our academic standards folks. Unfortunately, they could not be here with me today, but I wanted to make sure that their voices were heard, since they are out in the field working with LEAs across the state. Next slide, please. So some of the slides that you're seeing are the slides that we shared with our stakeholder group, and this is one of those slides. So one of the first things that we did is we shared with the external group was that background, the why. Why are we wanting to adjust those reading endorsements? And again, the discussions began over a year ago. And one of the things that we needed to do was clear up some of the confusion between the reading endorsement and the literacy endorsement. As you know, that K-5 literacy endorsement is something that I had shared with you just a minute ago from that Senate Bill 1572. And then all of a sudden we also have those reading endorsements. So there was a lot of confusion that was taking place. We needed to be able to really clearly be able to distinguish between those different endorsements. And when we have reading endorsement and literacy endorsement, many times people would come in and not know which one that they were applying for. Or they would think that just because they have a literacy endorsement that they now could become a reading specialist, which is not the case. And so that is where we really wanted to make sure that we were clearing this up. Next slide, please. So what we did is on this slide, we had the opportunity to really clear up what is the difference between the literacy endorsement and the reading endorsements. So you'll see here literacy endorsements beginning August 1st, 2028. That's going to be required for teachers who provide literacy instruction in grades K-5. That teaching experience not required, the reading practicum not required, and then you'll see that coursework through there, but it does require that Pearson's Foundation of Reading exam. And then the reading endorsement, it's currently required for reading specialists, interventionists, coaches, will also meet the Literacy K-5 literacy endorsement requirement, 3 years of teaching experience required, And then on through the practicum as well as the coursework, the exam is not required. So we really wanted the stakeholders to understand the difference between the two. And again, just because you have your literacy endorsement does not mean magically you get to be the reading specialist at the school, which is what we heard from the field. There was a lot of confusion there. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we were clearing this up. Next slide, please. So this was a summary slide that we used when we were working with academic standards, as well as what we presented to our external stakeholders. What we wanted to do is look at our current reading endorsements, K-8, 612, or K-12, and what we wanted to make sure is those positions requiring the endorsement, as you can see, required of an individual in the position of reading or literacy specialist, reading or literacy coach, or reading or literacy interventionist, making sure that's clearly identified, that prerequisite teaching certificates. So again, depending upon the endorsement or the grade range. So we had a lot of discussion with academic standards about this. What would that look like? So again, these are the current requirements, that experience of the current requirements, that 3 years of full-time teaching, the practicum requirements. Again, you can see there what those are as far as the K-8 and the 612, and then the K-12, what we're looking for as far as practicum goes. And then finally, that subject knowledge requirement. You'll see there the 20 to 24 semester hours of specified coursework or the pass of the AEPA. So that's what we started with for current requirements and those conversations. And then next slide, please. This is just an overview of the proposed changes, and then I'll go into more detail for each one. The endorsement titles. Our proposed changes would be that we would add that word specialist back in for reading specialist K-8, reading specialist 612, and reading specialist K-12 endorsement. There would be those technical change to state that the endorsements authorize the holder for those positions of specialist, reading interventionist, coach, or similar role. And then what we would also add in the prerequisite teaching certificates. So we would look at adding in that middle grades, because just like some of the other endorsements that we've talked about previously, we needed to adjust the endorsement language to catch up, so to speak, with those additional certificates that we now have. Experience, no change there. And then no change to the practicum requirement. But then you'll also notice down below option A and option B, adding in that science of reading, which you have heard probably over and over again across the country, that science of reading piece, a huge piece. And then I'll go into a little bit more detail as well about an additional change with some of the administration and supervision part, where the leadership piece was a little bit ambiguous, so we defined that even more. Next slide, please. So this next one, we looked at proposed, looking in here. So this one, you'll see that we're renumbering things. If you look at this, in the actual document that has the rule all laid out, you'll see a ton of strike throughs, and it looks really, really messy. The reason being is we want to be able to kind of back those things out a level and have them be at their own topic level, I guess you could say, so that it's not all embedded down deep in. And so there's a lot of strike throughs, and it looks really messy. But what we're actually doing again is backing those all out. Just one level is what's happening with that. Did you
Can
wanna-
I
Yeah.
add that when we considered the mathematics endorsements already, we already freed up those letters. So we're not changing the endorsement with the mathematics and striking anything and erasing them. We've already cleaned that up, and it opened up those spots. So we're just utilizing them.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good call. All right, next slide, please. All right, so the endorsement rule changes key, just like before, changes highlighted in green are those technical changes, and then changes highlighted in yellow, should say substantive. So sorry about that. Error on our part. Next slide, please. So moving on to this one, we're going to talk about the Reading Specialist K-8 endorsements. And next slide, please. Thank you, Rico. So looking at this one, we are proposing that we adjust the reading endorsement from K-8 to Reading Specialist K-8. This gives a more accurate description, authorized, provided by the endorsement. So you'll see that there. And then what you'll see is over on the left, just like before, this is what you're familiar with, those proposed changes, and then the rationale over on the right, that Reading Specialist K-8 endorsement. And then you'll also notice that, again, we've laid out authorizes the holder for the positions of that reading specialist, interventionist, reading coach, similar role. So it's a more concise rule, as you can see. Then down towards the bottom there, you'll see those 3 semester hours of elementary practicum in reading that includes experience with children in kindergarten through grade 5. And what we did there is that experience in K-5 is needed to ensure expertise in that K-8 grade range. Okay, next slide, please. In this one, we are looking at 3 semester hours of elementary practicum, again, or I'm sorry, 20, is that a repeat? Looking at that one there. That one might be a repeat. That's okay. I got lost in my own words there. So 15 semester hours, I think that one might have been a repeat. So that might have been on us. Of courses to include. So you'll see there, we changed that one. If you'll notice that strikeout there. So we're looking at those theoretical and research foundations of language and literacy. That's going to be replaced with science of reading. So again, we want to make sure that we're aligning with science of reading. And then also down below, we're looking at those 3 semester hours. You'll notice down there that we've taken that out, the elements of, and so it's just that technical revision for conciseness. And then down below, what we have is we're also looking, so it's instead of 3, it should be, I'm sorry, instead of 6, it should be 3 semester hours in reading assessment systems. And so that is just being replaced by requirement 5, I believe. And then next slide, please. And the right one. Thank you. So this is the one that I really wanted to point out to you. So this one, before it said 3 semester hours in leadership, and that was just kind of left open. We had a lot of discussion with academic standards as well as our stakeholders with what does this really mean for a reading specialist? And so what we did is we discussed this, and then what was decided upon was that really the reading specialist should have 3 semester hours in that administration and supervision of a reading program. And for this particular endorsement at the K-8 level, it should be in that elementary level. And so leadership was really not specific. So we wanted to make it a little bit more specific. And we also did some digging to see are there courses that are already available, or would this be something that our IHEs would have to create? And there are courses that are already available that would fit in this particular category. And everyone was in agreement with this. And so we got really positive feedback from the field on this one. And then down underneath that, you'll also see those 3 semester hours science of reading. So again, making sure that those are required to qualify for the new literacy K-5 endorsement. Applicants can use those for both endorsements. Something that we had stated earlier, but we really wanted to make sure that everything was in alignment and up to date for those particular courses. Next slide, please. So for this one, we're looking at that passing score you'll see there, where for this particular one, that passing score of the appropriate subject knowledge portion on the AEPA can substitute its 15 semester hours of courses described versus the 21. And so this is also over on the rationale is letting you know that the current rule allows applicants to use a passing score on the AEPA. And it's going into a little bit more detail that reading endorsement K-8 exam, the qualification for an exam waiver in lieu of those 21 semester hours, et cetera, over on that rationale side. And then down below, those completion of department approved training can substitute for those semester hours. Again, we're allowing approved trainings to substitute for college coursework, and that provides option. It also reduces the cost for applicants, and that was something that we wanted to make sure was still included. Next slide, please. Thank you. Do we need to take a pause on that one before we go to 612? Yes. That's a lot. That was a lot. Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to open this up for discussion and questions. Angela?
Chair Peasley, I have just a few questions about
Yes.
the 15 educators who are on the stakeholder group. So could you tell me like what districts and what roles did each of those 15 educators have?
So going back to those, we had some literacy specialists, we had some teachers. I should have brought the exact list for you, and I did not, so that's on me. I can look that up quickly though, if you would like for me to.
Please, that
Yep.
would be great because I just want to ensure that there was, it's not like one teacher, two teachers, and like
Yep.
13 administrators. And then also like if we're discussing rule, we want to make sure that it's representative
Absolutely.
of the state and it's not just one person with rule when we have 13 counties that are technically rule.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And then the other question, if I may too,
Go ahead.
is when we talk about some of these courses that we asked the stakeholder groups and we looked them up and that they were available, were they available online? Were they available face-to-face? Because some of our rural areas and school districts don't have readily available post-secondary opportunities, it would be really important in some of those counties that they are not just available like to go to MCC or Rio Salado, but that they're also available online and what are those costs? And because when you do have a smaller district, they don't have a professional development department who can have those courses.
Right. And so the courses, as they were before, right, they are very similar to what was before. What we are looking at is coursework that is being adjusted to science of reading and would be aligned with what is happening with the literacy endorsement as well. And most of the time, we would see those being available online, as well as some of the approved coursework that is through the department as well. There's several times that things are sent through our department through academic standards that are approved, and they have a whole list of things that are approved online for them to be able to take, should they
Perfect.
want to go through that way for the endorsement.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yes. And I am looking for that list for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions from the folks online? And then
I
Member
had a
Horn.
quick question. On the section that says includes experience with children in grades K-5, is that all grades? Like children from each of those grade levels? It was on slide 12.
It's within that grade span. Oops. It's within that grade span.
So just, okay. Thank you.
So we wanted to make sure that it's not just, you're not just having the experience with 6 through 8, but there's that grade span. So there's experience within all of those different grade levels.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Member Horn?
Thank you, Chair Peasley. My question is currently at NIU, we have our coursework is approved for the reading endorsement K-8. But with the proposed changes, will they audit the coursework and what will be the time frame? How will they know those changes have occurred?
So If and when this goes through, then what would happen is that the department would honor the current coursework that is in existence for people that might be utilizing the current coursework that is approved. And so we would look at the dates, and then we would be able to track the date, and anything prior to the date of this being in existence, then we would be able to honor that for those people that are in current courses now.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions?
And the-
Member Lighting?
Yes, can we just flip back to where those numbers are changed? I think I might have written this down wrong, but where we changed the numbers and the letters under the reading specialist. Can you flip back to that slide? Maybe about 4 slides before this, 11, 10 or 11, I think.
You go back to where the letters are, the numbers are switched.
Member Lighting, you should have access as well online to the
I'm
actual
looking
draft
at-
of the rule change with the strike through. It's like a Word, it's a PDF of a Word doc.
Okay.
Go
I would have that
back
available too. We have that here
forward.
on the dais,
Sorry,
but if you open that up as well, might help clarify too.
So this is my, well, let's see, I'm just looking at R72615H. It says reading specialist K-12, but are we talking about, are we gonna get to that? I'm sorry, that's what it is. There's K-8 above that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's-
So
I'm confused. I saw the K-8 and then I had not seen that before, so I just wanted to double check. Okay.
yeah, you are correct, Member Lighting. So I've just done one. I've just done K-8, and then I will roll into the other endorsement proposed changes, and that will be that'll be the additional K-12 and then the 6-12. And so they're all going to be very similar to what you just saw. Because they all are going to follow the same format and have very similar wording.
That's good. I just didn't see that one, so I was like confused. So I'm good.
Yes, good question. Great question.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
And then Chair Peasley, I do have a list of people that were invited. Would you like for me to read those off now or save that to the end?
Yes, please, Director, if you would do that, please.
Yes, absolutely. So we invited from Maricopa Unified School District, we invited a literacy coordinator. From Washington Elementary School District, we invited a primary teacher. From Deer Valley Unified School District, we invited their K-5 literacy curriculum instruction and assessment specialist. From Higley Unified School District, we invited a primary teacher. From Mesa Public Schools, we invited an intermediate teacher. From Wilcox Unified School District, we invited a special education teacher. From Phoenix Elementary School District, we invited a behavior specialist. From Cottonwood Oak Creek, we invited the director of curriculum. From Douglas Schools, we invited their K-3 reading specialist. Also from Douglas, their K-5 instructional coach. We invited, oops, sorry, it decided to close on me. Rio Salado, Arizona Christian University, ASU. We also invited from Pendergast Elementary, an ELA and social studies coordinator. From Somerton School District, the superintendent. From Student Choice High School and Glendale Community College, the administrator for mentoring and community partnerships. From Vail, the Title I reading specialist. From Sunnyside School District, primary teacher. From Swawita Elementary School District, student services. From Flagstaff, their literacy coach. From ASU, a research project manager. And then we also had the director of ELA and Move On with Reading, a dyslexia and literacy interventionist, and the deputy associate superintendent from academic services.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I apologize for not having that list in the packet for you. Now I know for next time.
Thank you. Member Philpott, any other questions?
Yes, Chair Peasley, if I may. And so you said these were the people that were invited. So which ones attended the actual stakeholder group and gave their input? Because you said
Yes.
you invited, but only 15 attended.
Right. So all of them were able to give input because we sent the information out to all of them. So if they didn't attend virtually to the meeting, they all were able to provide input through the survey that we sent out.
Perfect.
So everybody had input.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions? Then I think let's go on to the next endorsement, please.
Okay. So the next endorsement that we have would be proposed changes for reading specialist 612. And you're going to see very similar wording for this one as you did for K8. For this one, you'll see that we're looking for the same changes, changing it from reading endorsement 612 to reading specialist 612. Again, same rationale as the previous one for K8. Also looking at adding for this one the early childhood and middle grades to ensure that we are adding those additional certificates that have not been added since the last time this endorsement was put into place. Next slide, please. For this one, looking at those proposed changes, looking at the 15 semester hours of courses to include all of the following. And again, reaching out to stakeholders as well as internal here on this. Those 3 semester hours you'll see there again of the looking through the content reading and writing for students in 6 through 12. So you'll see again, this is going to look identical to the others. However, it's just going to have that 6 through 12 piece. And you'll also see here that those 3 semester hours in reading assessment systems, as well as 3 semester hours in administration and supervision of a reading program at the secondary level versus the other one, which was more at the primary level. Next slide, please. For this one, we're looking at 3 semester hours again in the science of reading instruction, which includes that systematic phonics instruction, same rationale as before, ensuring that alignment piece, and 3 semester hours in reading instruction, including assessments, instructional practices, and interventions to improve student reading proficiency for struggling readers, including students with characteristics of dyslexia. And then you'll also see here for this particular one that its applications received on or after October 1st, 2027. The coursework or training must include a focus on improving reading proficiency for struggling readers in grades 6 through 12. Again, making it specific to our 6 through 12 students. And I believe this is the end, maybe, if you go to the, oh, I'm just kidding. For this one, looking here, the passing score for this one would be that 15 semester hours, that passing score on the appropriate subject knowledge portion of the Arizona Teacher Proficiency Assessment, so that you can substitute for the 15th semester hours of courses described in that subsection, excuse me. And then again, same rationale. And then the completion of department approved training may substitute for the semester hours required in that subsection. And then the 15 clock hours of training. Again, the same rationale for the reading specialist K-8 endorsement. Next slide, please. That's the end. Thank you. I missed a slide. Questions on that? On that one? Looks very similar.
I guess I just have one.
Mhm.
Can you describe the scenario that a teacher with an early childhood certificate
I knew you were going to ask this. This is where I really wanted
could
my
get this?
literacy friends to be here for this one. So we had a lot of discussion with this one. I'm going to look back at my friend Maura for this because we went round and round on this one, not in a bad way, in a good
Yes.
way of why would we want to put the early childhood certificate in here for a 612 for the reading specialist 612. And how do I say this in the best way, Maura?
I mean, they can already add their. Right. Yes. It just, it becomes the employer's decision.
Right. So they can already add the K-12. So really the reading endorsement. So at that point, it really becomes as Maura was saying, it really becomes the employer's decision at that point. And so we kind of were like, well, why wouldn't you then just add that early childhood piece, that early childhood certificate on as well? It would just make sense in that particular situation, should they want to do that.
Okay,
So-
that makes really good sense.
Okay.
And Chair Peasley and members, remember that endorsements come in about 3 different flavors.
Right.
Some of them just expand the current certification, like that's the middle grades endorsement. Some of them define a content area and expand the certificate. The example of that is my secondary certificate, and I have a music K-12 endorsement. So it allows me to teach music all the way down to K, even though my certificate's a 612. And then there's the other endorsements that show specialization, such as the SEI, ESL. It doesn't necessarily expand your certificate. It applies to the grade span that's on your certificate. So this is one of those that kind of defines an expert. It's actually probably a 4th category, right? Defines expertise, defines kind of a content, and in the case of some of these certificates, could expand your certificate to be authorized to work with kids at that grade level, but specifically in this area.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Member Philpott.
Thank you, Chair Peasley. My only question is more, I guess, philosophical in a way, is with the specialist 6 through 12 endorsement, like usually 6th grade is either an elementary or a middle grades. And so kind of including it with secondary, I know that's not really, we're trying to align with all the other certificates, but I just think that when you teach 6th grade reading, it's very different than teaching junior high or high school reading, especially to be a specialist in those areas. But I do understand the need to try to align them with other certificates. But like Mr. Duplantis said, like there's usually elementary, middle grades, and then secondary. And sometimes I feel like 6th grade, looping it in with a secondary endorsement is not really matches what we see in our schools, especially with our union high school districts and our elementary school districts. I would be curious to know how many secondary schools include 6th grade with their, I know probably just some rural ones are K-8, but usually not 6 through 12. At least I would hope not. So just to kind of something to earmark for the future whenever we do another alignment. But I know for the purposes of today, that's just my feedback.
Yes, there are rural districts that do have 6 through 8. Yeah, and I think even here in Phoenix, we've got some. So that's not all that uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, Chair Peasley, members, Member Philpott, I'm not sure that if we just go to the certificates, there's a lot of options and there's a lot of overlap, and I'm not sure that they align directly to a school type rather than just a grade. Somebody back in the day decided that 6 was that cusp where it maybe felt a little more middle. I mean, we used to not have a middle grade certificate.
Mhm.
So it was elementary K-8, and then the overlap was 6-12. And so, you open the door for somebody to teach 6, 7, 8 with a secondary or an elementary, depending on how that laid out. And so we're kind of in that leftover, but I would urge folks to look at the possibility of that allows them, that educator that holds that, more options and flexibility. If they are in a secondary school, high school, and they feel the need to work with more of that middle grade, they don't have to go back and get something else. They're already covered if they have the 6 through 12 endorsement.
Thank you very much. Members online, excuse me, are there any questions, comments? No, sounds good. All right, then, let's go on to the next endorsement.
Okay. The next endorsement is the reading endorsement K-12. And again, you will see very similar as the last two. And so we are proposing reading specialist K-12 endorsement. And so that would, this endorsement would authorize the holder for the positions, again, reading specialist, reading interventionist, et cetera. And again, same rationale as reading specialist K-8 in the beginning. And then you'll also see the requirements. We've added that middle grade certificate as well in number 2. Next slide. Thank you. And then looking here, you'll see that we have struck out 24, and then you'll see that 18 semester hours of coursework to include all of the following. And you'll note that what we have here would be the elementary content area of reading and writing for students kindergarten through grade 8. But then you'll also see down below that reading and writing 6 through 12. So you'll notice that there is that combination to ensure that we have spanned that K-8, or I'm sorry, that K-12 grade band. And then also down at the bottom, you'll see the 3 semester hours in the reading assessment. And then when we look at that leadership piece, I think that, yep, down at the very, very bottom, we're looking at administration and supervision of a kindergarten through 12th grade reading program. So again, really trying to tease out what does that word leadership mean? And particularly if you are a K-12 reading specialist, making sure that there is experience and having the ability to lead as well as supervise a K-12 reading program. Next slide, please. And so looking here, those 3 semester hours, again, adding in science of reading instruction to include systematic phonics, and then 3 semester hours in reading instruction, including assessments, instructional practices, interventions for reading proficiency for struggling readers, and then that passing score. And you'll see down there, we've adjusted where it says 24 to align with the 18 semester hours of courses that we have just described to you. And then the completion of department approved training that may substitute for the semester hours in those subsections. And the 15 clock hours, or the equivalent of the competency-based equivalent to 1 semester hour, you'll see there. That is the same rationale as the reading K-8 endorsement. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question that does cover all 3.
Yes.
How is the practicum defined in these endorsements?
Our Maura is telling me R72-601. So let me look at that for you real quick.
Thank heavens for Mara Yildirim. She's our number specialist.
Chair Peasley, so R72601 is the definitions that overarch all certification. And so it's got 13 definitions, one of which is practicum. Number 9 means a period of structured observation and practice of the skills being learned, supervised by an individual trained in that area. The commonly used terms student teaching, internship, residency, or observation course are included in this definition.
What he said.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wanted to hear that, thank you for the definition. because I wanted to hear that and have a little discussion as to how do working teachers get that practicum in, say, the upper grade. So we've got a third grade teacher, loves teaching third grade, doing great, wants to get her K-8 or her 6-12, and how does she get that, he or she get that practicum experience? Who does the supervisions?
I know how I did it as a former principal. I don't know if that's helpful or not for you. But I can tell you that administrators will oftentimes work together if somebody is in program, to be able to work out coverage so that somebody can go over and observe.
Okay.
And that's what I did for my teachers who were in coursework, even within coursework on my own campus, where I would go and cover a class so that somebody could go in and observe the reading specialist or whatnot, or go to the feeder school, to the middle school if need be, where we were in regions in my particular district. And that was just worked out between administrators. I don't know if that is the case everywhere. But that is one way that I know that it is done.
Well, I appreciate that, and I just wanted that to be known to the committee members, because not all committee members are working in the pre-K-12
Mhm.
systems. And so that there are options for teachers to get those out of grade level experience,
Absolutely.
practicum experiences. Thank you. That answered my question. Member Horn?
Chair Peasley, if I could give another example, there are some of our students who are being hired as teachers of record, and yet they are not fully certified. They haven't even finished their teacher ed
Right.
program. But they also are required a practicum experience outside of that classroom experience. So they'll either make an agreement with the principal, or they will go to a different grade level during their prep time. So it really puts a lot of pressure on those students, but that's what the system has
Those are the requirements.
provided, and the students took advantage of it. So there are multiple pathways
Right.
to get the practicum.
Thank you very much, Member Horn. Online, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Chair Peasley, this is Robbie. Just a quick clarification. When we say 3 semester hours, are we talking about 45 seat hours? Is that 45 hours that the teacher would be out of their classroom to do some type of supervision or observations?
Yeah. Right. So it's that 3 semester hours of college coursework or 45 clock hours of the Arizona Department of Ed approved training. And so that's what is listed here. Are you talking about the practicum, or are you talking about the coursework? Let me
I'm
clarify,
talking-
Member
I'm
Cooperage.
talking about the practicum.
The
I'm talking
practicum.
about supervising, as was just asked about the K-12 supervision for the practicum. I'm just saying the practical aspect of that is, yes, that's what we would do, is free teachers up to be able to go do, but 45 hours is a lot of time to be out of your classroom as well. I'm not sure that there's an alternative to that, but that is something that might be of concern for practitioners, for teachers, for administrators, to say 45 hours out of the classroom, you're finding a substitute, you're giving up your instructional time to do your observation times. Just something that I don't know if there's an alternative, or if this is just a viewpoint, but it was a bit of concern when you rationalize it out, that 45 hours out of the classroom is quite a bit of time out of the classroom.
If I could, Member Chair Peasley, Member Cooperage, and members, in the old rule, it was the same requirement, and so it's not an upped requirement at all. It's a copy and paste. It's not modifying that, and I understand that, but I also think from our ed prep practitioners that are delivering this, I think that's spanned across a time frame as well. I'm not sure that is like I don't recall seeing that like 45 clock hours in 3 weeks. It can be spanned across however they manage that. But we've got ed prep folks as part of this committee that can probably speak to that better than I could.
Thank you. And also thank you for clarifying that that is, has always been there as a requirement. But that's what happens when these endorsements and certificates come up for review. We have an opportunity to question why something is like it was. And if it has been in place all along and we have quite a few reading specialists, those folks figured it out.
And if I could be so bold, Chair Peasley as well. Again, this isn't the literacy endorsement where it's a current classroom teacher that is going to stay classroom teaching and is just showing the specialization. This is arguably one of the endorsements we've had for quite some time that it speaks to teacher leadership. And this is they're elevating themselves not only in training and competency or efficacy, but then they're probably seeking a role of leadership over other peers in leading the charge for the reading program, reading interventions at their sites. So if I can speak to the rigor of that, that's probably why that was built in.
Thank you very much. This is why I like this committee, because the work of this committee is asking these kinds of questions. And as we have learned over the years, when this information from our committee goes up to the State Board of Education, they've been able to have established trust that we have really done a good job vetting from a variety of positions and perspectives in education. Are there any other questions? Member Horn.
Chair Peasley, if I may, when you talk about the ADE list for approved training for these endorsements, what is that process? You approve the program or the list of courses, then a student comes in and brings a transcript? Or how does that work?
So Chair Peasley, Member Horn, if someone is applying for the endorsement, then what happens is they apply for that endorsement through the certification unit. And then what we do is we look at either that transcript, we do a transcript review, or if they have taken coursework through approved trainings, et cetera. There is a list of approved trainings that are on our website, on the ADE website, and that is taken care of through Academic Standards, our literacy team. And they're the ones that approve. They have their own process for approval. And so that list is continually updated, and then we have access to that so that we can see if something is on that list or not.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions? Is that Member Lighting?
Yes, I was just gonna confirm that in Institutes of Higher Ed that we can take that internship over 16 weeks. That's about 3.5 hours a week. So it makes it much more reasonable for teachers to do that. And then some of the hours might be, looking the planning hours that they do together and reviewing assessments, and some of those things are done before school or after school. So it doesn't always have to be like right out of the classroom.
Thank you so much, Member Lighting and Member Horn, for giving us those other options. I appreciate that. Okay, then what we'd like to do, I'd like to call for a motion. Is there a motion to recommend the proposed changes to Board Rule R 72615 F through H relating to reading specialist endorsements?
Are you including all three?
I think we are, yes.
If I could clarify, if you are able to pull up, if you're virtual today, if you're able to pull up the PDF that has .doc in it, that is the strike-through version of the rule language. If you're here in person, it's the stapled one. And so in looking at the rules as they exist right now, again, the reading endorsements currently reside in the endorsement 615 under H. And then under H, they have 1, 2, and 3, which are these 3 endorsements. And what we're proposing is that we have already addressed letters F and I think I got this right. Letters F, which was grandfathering language in the mathematics endorsement. And so we've already recommended that we remove that. And so we're moving the first reading endorsement, the K8, up to F. The current G is a reading endorsement with grandfathering language. And so we're replacing that. We don't need the grandfathering language to 2011 anymore. And then H. So we're kind of repurposing those letters, F, G, and H, and breaking out these 3 endorsements that were under one citation currently into kind of top level. And so as you look at the first page of that document, F is a reading specialist K8 endorsement, and you'll see F1 is the verbiage that Jamie presented on that defines the purpose of this endorsement and the role. And then 2 are the requirements. 2A is the revisions to the certificates. D3, 2D3 is the 3 semester hour adjustment. 2D4 is the leadership clarification. And then 2E and F are the science of reading. And then there's aligning also in 3 and 4 to the current waiver language and that type of thing. And then if you turn the page or the next page on that, you see all the strike through, which is again kind of adjusting these letters for that grandfathering. And then you'll see G with the similar changes. If you scan down to G2-4, you'll see there's the secondary level. G2-5, the 6 through 12 is there. G2-F, you've got that October 1st, 2027, which is kind of allowing the coursework providers to kind of modify that so that specifically the secondary folks get specifically secondary things. And the next page is the H, which is where the current rule currently resides and now becomes that K-12 with likewise the same changes. And so that's how it kind of lays out.
Does that help? Clarify? Member
Yes.
Horn?
I will accept that proposal, that rule change.
Okay, Member Horn makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Member Lighting. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Oh, did I hear a discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for that clear presentation of a little convoluted thing. A bit of changes here. You folks are so good. You're just wonderful. Thank you. The next item is item 4, the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding the proposed rule R17615V, teacher leader endorsement. Deputy Director Duplanty, what happens when we run out of letters?
We're done. I'm not sure. Members online, could you hear that? I'm not sure her mic was on. Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, no worries. That unit is a little quirky. I don't know why it's in the chair or president's role seat, but it is. So we're looking at R72615 endorsements, and what's in front of you is draft language to add B, which is the teacher leader endorsement grades pre-K through 12. Likewise, I'm going to hand this off to the department and Deputy Associate Superintendent Wilbur to give you an overview of the rule language and the work in working on this.
Good morning again. All right, I'm so excited to present this proposal to you this morning. This proposal is for a teacher leader endorsement. And next slide, please. I'm going to start again. This is going to look a little similar to the reading specialist endorsement proposal, where we have some of the slides that we used with our stakeholders so that you can see the progression of how far we've come with this endorsement, the work that has been happening behind the scenes to get it to you this morning. So starting this morning with the timeline, The stakeholder group met to create the Arizona Teacher Leader Professional Standards back in 2021. And those teacher leader standards were adopted by the State Board of Education in 2023. From there in 2023, the teacher leader endorsement research began. And we started to look at other states' endorsements, certificates, requirements, etc., where we knew that we wanted to look at how do we set teacher leaders apart utilizing the teacher leader professional standards. In 2023, the recruitment and retention unit and the certification unit began work on the teacher leader endorsement. And then in March of 2024, we held a stakeholder meeting where we invited several different people from around the state to come together to start to look at what does this look like, sound like, feel like to create a teacher leader endorsement. From May through June, we sent out stakeholder feedback for the proposed rule language and the requirements. And then in September, we sent out an additional stakeholder feedback survey for revised proposed rule language and requirements. Next slide, please. So why? Why are we looking to do this? And this is one of the same slides that we utilized with our stakeholders back in March of 2024. And we knew that we were getting feedback from schools, from educators, educational organizations, as well as people from within our colleagues, the Department of Ed, that we wanted to look at how will we serve as an optional, what will we do to look at the teacher leader professional standards, and how do we make sure that we are honoring the work that teachers are doing above and beyond the classroom day, leading professional development, making sure that not only just that, but representing that expertise from the field. This was also a way that we were looking at for retention and also those alternative staffing models, and looking at there are a group of educators that don't necessarily want to go into administration, but they want to be leaders on their campus. So how do we differentiate for that? Instead of getting a master's to go into educational leadership, what do we do to make sure that we're utilizing those teacher leader standards and create this endorsement for those to set them apart? So what we've done is started to create this career advancement option, so to speak, and it would create that opportunity to support teachers who serve as leaders within their building, their district, their organization. And these teachers might regularly lead professional development, coach or mentor others, lead initiatives, facilitate work teams or committees. And this endorsement could provide a means for educators to represent that expertise on their credential and provide guidance around coursework and training. And for the LEAs, we also talked about the fact that this endorsement could be used for hiring preferences and to help justify those varying roles, responsibilities, and of course, compensation. Next slide, please. We invited 27 educators from around the state. Urban, suburban, rural were represented. And I have my list ready to go. I learned, thank you, Member Philpott. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then we're in sequence.
Yes. But now I know for next time. So, so we invited principals, from Madison School District, Buckeye Elementary School District. We invited an associate superintendent of HR from Nogales. We invited central office staff from Mesa Unified School District. We invited a second grade mid-career teacher from Higley. We invited the superintendent from Douglas Unified School District. Of course, the recruitment and retention team from ADE was there. We invited central office from Lake Havasu. We invited the Tucson Regional Education Center director, obviously from Tucson, the Trek people. We invited Rio Salado College. We invited the West director from NIET, the National Institute of Excellence in Teaching. We invited Dr. Sadorf, the superintendent, Arizona Rural Schools Association from Stanfield. We invited the lead tech instructional coach and teacher from Peoria Unified School District. We invited the program director from the AZK-12 Center. We invited the senior director for the whole schools model and scaled support from ASU. We invited an instructional coach and teacher from Roosevelt Unified School District, behavior specialist and teacher from Phoenix Elementary District, administrator of federal and community programs from Osborne Elementary, a high school mentor coordinator from Nogales, the TREC project coordinator from Tucson, the superintendent from Pinon Unified School District, sixth grade teacher and national board certified teacher from Marana School District, a teacher and high school math CTE teacher from Phoenix Union High School District, a teacher from Deer Valley Unified School District, director of teaching and learning from Mesa Public Schools, a self-contained ED special education teacher from Madison, and a central office staff from Deer Valley who leads their personnel development. So we tried to capture a little bit of everybody from around the state. Not everybody was able to attend, but we did, again, towards the end of this, you may have seen that we sent this out, the survey out to everyone and got a great response rate, because we also asked our stakeholders after the initial meeting, if you are presenting this information and you want those people that you presented to share their feedback to us, please do so, or you yourself can put it in and say that you presented to groups of people. So we had over 150 initially entries into our survey to give us really good feedback, which then allowed us to do some changes to the rule language before we brought it to you. And then we sent it back out to the initial group and then got additional feedback, which overwhelmingly they were pleased with the additional changes that were made. So initially the meeting was held in person. And then those that did not attend, again, they were communicated via email for input. So several people said, I can't make it to that March meeting, but please keep me on the list. I'm very excited for this. Please send me the information that you are sending out. Next slide, please.
Well, I have a question
yes.
though.
Yes, Chair.
If a
Peasley.
member has a question,
Mhm.
do you want us to hold them until after the presentation is finished?
I have a question about that, what she just said.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, if we could, Member Horn.
Pardon me. I would be remiss,
Oh my gosh, that's,
I would be remiss if I didn't suggest that NIU be included in part of your stakeholder meetings, because both lists were extensive for reading and for the teacher leader, but NIU was not included in either one. So of course I have to say that.
Absolutely. Yes, Member Horn, thank you.
all right, thank you. Please continue.
Yes, and we did have AZK-12 involved in this one. I know that's not necessarily, but yes, I understand completely. Thank you, Member Horn. So in this particular slide, one of the first things that we did is that we defined teacher leadership, and we actually had our participants, our stakeholders, define teacher leadership. So I will not ask you to do that right now, but this was an activity that we did with our stakeholders, is we asked them to define teacher leadership, because that was one of the most important pieces. Everybody defines teacher leadership a little bit differently. And so we needed to make sure that we understood as a stakeholder group what is teacher leadership and the kinds of roles that are given to teacher leaders on campuses, as well as how are teacher leaders given support and professional development within the LEA or on the campus. And so we had everything provided to us on poster paper all over the room, everything from leading a team to being a behavior coach, to being on site council, to being a PLC lead, to utilizing data, to personalized learning, to being someone who does all the things, to, oh my gosh, we have to not have that person do all the things because they're going to get burned out. So it led to really great discussion within the team to be able to tease out how do we define that. Next slide, please. From there, what we did is we took the Arizona Teacher Leader Professional Standards, and we went through those standards with our stakeholders, and we gave them the history of what these standards are. Some people in the room were not aware of what the standards were. Some people in the room helped to create the standards. So it gave an opportunity for us to be able to look through the books together, that they are aligned with national standards. The drafts were sent out for feedback, of course. That final draft was presented to the Arizona State Board of Education in spring of 2023, and then it was approved. Next slide, please. We went into details about the 7 standards and how each of the standards have domains. And within each of the 7 standards and the domains, there are functions that provide that detailed explanation of each standard. And then further into it, next slide, please. We had them dig into the standards, and they created on this Foursquare, they were able to look into the key terms, the function, and what does this actually look like within an LEA, within a campus, and then additional information. And they were able to share out kind of like a jigsaw activity. And so we were able to really dig into what does it look like, sound like, feel like on a campus and within an LEA. Next slide, please. From there, what we did is we took a look at other states. So we had done, as a recruitment and retention team, we went through research and looked at what other states have in place. Everything from a master teacher certificate to an accomplished teacher certificate to a mentor teacher certificate, as well as teacher leader endorsement or school leader endorsement. And then we gave a description of what does it take to get that specific certificate and or endorsement. And so we shared that with our group so that they would have an idea of what other states are doing. Not to say that we wanted to copy what those states were doing, but just so that we had a little bit of a foundation as to where do we start with this, because it was a pretty big undertaking at that point. So this is what's kind of out there across the United States, and we kind of bucketed them under those three big buckets. Next slide, please. We did a call to action at that point. And we asked them to think about, as you're thinking about teacher leadership roles and considering the teacher leader standards, we really started to think about those critical skills that someone might be taking on beyond just being just a teacher, right? A teacher is so much. There's so many things that a teacher does on a daily basis for kids. And then we're asking teachers to do more and be more for their colleagues. What does that look like? What skills and trainings do those people need? Do those teachers need in order to not only move their kids forward in their classrooms, but then how do they use those skills and that professional development to move their colleagues forward? So this was a really interesting conversation that took place. So what would be the training requirements needed for teacher leaders? And we sat on this conversation for a really long time within the stakeholder group. Next slide, please. And we had butcher paper all over the room. We had conversations all over the room. We had strikeouts. We had, what about this? How about this? Well, why not this? Everything from coursework to what's going to actually help move their peers forward. That was kind of the guiding question for us. What are those critical skills beyond being a teacher of children? Now you're a teacher of adults. Now you're a teacher of your colleagues. How do we move that work forward? And so these were the 5 areas that came out: that cognitive coaching / coaching to support, that adult learning theory, that data analysis, the curriculum and instruction, and ethics and professionalism. Those were the ones that bubbled to the top, and those were the ones that everyone absolutely could agree on. That's what a teacher leader needs training in to be able to have those training requirements for this specific endorsement. Next slide, please. From there, we had the discussion as far as the prerequisite experience and the certificate. And again, we had a lot of discussion here as far as holding that valid Arizona Standard Teaching Certificate, which certificates could this be added to, and which ones would we not add it to, and why. And so there was a lot of discussion here around what would make the most sense. Where do you often see teacher leaders, and where would it not make sense? Most endorsements, we also know, require a minimum of 3 years teaching experience. And is that enough for a teacher leader to have this, or for a teacher to have this endorsement added to his or her certificate? And so we had a lot of discussion around that as well. And everybody agreed, for the most part, that 3 years was enough. We always have some where we were like, well, maybe not. But then there were others that were like, there's so many great people that come to us, and we don't want to box anybody out. But at the same time, we really want to make sure that those 5 topics are being covered. And there are some people in the very beginning that they are just, this is what they're meant to do, and they fly, and they bring others along with them. Next slide, please. So this is the initial survey that we sent out. And on this particular one, this was sent out. We asked everyone if they could provide for us the agreement with the prerequisite certificate types. And this was the standard professional teaching, classroom-based teaching, international teaching, or standard career and technical teaching certificate. And as you can see, it was overwhelmingly that yes, people agreed with this. We had very few that did not agree with this particular one. Moving to the next one. 3 years of teaching experience. 83% agreed that 3 years of teaching experience was enough. We did have some people that said it needed to be 5. Some people said it needed to be 10. So we know that we can't make everyone happy. Some of the comments were interesting, but in sticking in alignment with most of our other endorsements, 3 years is what we see on a lot of our other endorsements as well. Next slide, please. This is the one that we felt we needed to go back and adjust based on comments, and I'll show you some of those comments in just a moment. But this was 15 semester hours from an accredited institution that align with the Arizona Teacher Leader Professional Standards, with those 5 coursework topics. And so because it was 15 semester hours from an accredited institution, we had a lot of comments that were very concerned about just coming from an accredited institution, and why not professional organizations where it could be a little more cost effective for teachers instead of having to go back and paying a little bit more at an IHE. And so we did make an adjustment to this, and you'll see that a little bit later on in the rule language. Next slide, please. The 5 coursework topics you'll see here, 80% agreed with the 5 coursework topics: that principles and facilitation of adult learning, the data analysis and educational research, those pieces that we had gone through. What we were looking at, collaboration, continuous improvement, professional learning, the school culture, like we had gone through and really looked at what are we looking for to be able to move somebody forward. And so we had put that out there, and for the most part, people had agreed. Of course, we did have some people that were like, we really need family engagement in there, or we really need this in there. And so we really looked at how would this help bring a colleague along, and how would this push a colleague forward in a teacher leader position. Next slide, please. And then, of course, the overall, what do you agree overall with the draft language? And so this is where we knew we needed to do a little bit of adjusting. And so that's what we did at this moment, is we went back and we looked at the comments, and we made some adjustments to the rule language before we're bringing it to you today. Next slide, please. So the next two slides are just some comments from stakeholders. So I wanted to not just show you all the flowers and the fluff and the rainbows and butterflies, so to speak. I wanted to show you some of the other things too that that people are saying, that gave us the opportunity to go back and to make some adjustments. So yes, there were some people were very excited about this. They like that. But they also were wondering, what about professional organizations to be able to provide the coursework versus just the accredited institutions? Next slide, please. And again, some more comments for you from stakeholders. Next slide, please. And so what we did is we sent this back out to our initial core group. And what we did is we adjusted the language, and we're going to present that language to you today. That is going to lead into, you'll see the accredited institution piece that will include professional organizations. And that is the biggest adjustment that we made to the actual rule language. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so you can see that I also included a few of the comments. We did not get as many survey results back. I sent it out a second time to see if we could get more people to comment on it. And unfortunately, we did not. So I just want to be very open and transparent with you about that I did send it out to that stakeholder group twice. I don't know if they were tired of hearing from me, but I really will just like, please, we want to bring this to you all, but we were very transparent and we made the changes based on the comments that were given to us. So with that, I'm going to roll right into the proposed teacher leader pre-K-12 endorsement, teacher leader endorsement. Next slide, please. So the proposed rule, the teacher leader endorsement grades pre-K through 12. The teacher leader endorsement is optional but recommended for the positions of mentor teacher, consultant, instructional coach, professional development facilitator, or similar leadership role. And the rationale for this would be establishing that the endorsement is optional, will prevent staffing burdens, allow candidates to demonstrate qualifications for a teacher leader role. So we wanted to provide a few examples, but also provide that caveat at the end, or a similar leadership role. So it could be open, and obviously it's optional. It's an add-on. We had a few comments that were like, does this have to happen? No, it does not. It is optional, of course. Requirements would be that valid standard professional teaching certificate, a classroom-based standard teaching certificate, international teaching certificate, or a standard career and technical education certificate. So those would be the prerequisite certificates that reflect the educator preparation requirements that are appropriate for this endorsement. So that's what the stakeholders in the committee felt were appropriate for this particular endorsement. And then verification of 3 years of full-time teaching experience in preschool through grade 12. Again, minimum required experience needed. And then the LEAs may choose to require additional experience should they want to within their own specific requirements of a job description. Okay. Next slide, please. Under letter C, completion of 15 semester hours of educational courses that align with the Arizona Teacher Leader Professional Standards described in R7-2-602.02 and include the following: principles and facilitation of adult learning, data analysis and the use of current educational research, collaboration and continuous improvement strategies, professional learning, coaching principles, and constructive feedback, school culture, climate, and professionalism. So these required courses teach the knowledge and skills that align with the Arizona Teacher Leader Professional Standards. And these are the areas that the stakeholder group felt would be necessary for a teacher leader. And then completion of board-approved training from a professional educational organization or an accredited institution may substitute for the semester hours of courses required in subsection V2C. 15 clock hours of training or the equivalent competency-based credential is equivalent to 1 semester hour. And so that would be approved training could be offered at a lower cost than college coursework for teachers pursuing this endorsement. And we would seek board approval to ensure high quality training would be required. So we would put in place a process very similar to what the academic standards team has in place for coursework for the literacy courses.
Thank you. This is so exciting for me. I am really excited. I get excited about a lot of things anyway, but this is exciting to have this option. Yeah, I know you've been working really hard on this throughout your tenure here in the department before getting to this position. But this is a great option for so many teachers that we have in our buildings that have such leadership talent, but don't want to go into administration. But we have a great need for this position. So, are there other questions? Member Philpott.
Thank you, Chair Peasley. These courses, you said that they were from the stakeholder group and that they agreed that these were the main topics. And so where are these offered where teacher leaders could get them?
So Chair Peasley, Member Philpott, what we did is we started to look at what is in existence currently at IHEs, and also because there were so many comments about educational organizations, we also started to look to see what is available. And there are coursework at educational organizations as well as in IHEs that are currently available that would coincide with many of these courses currently.
Sorry, I killed you.
Let me rephrase that. Many of these topics currently.
And if I could, since I was involved with this before transitioning, I had an associate soup ask me once, like, why? What's the call for this? And it's like, this could be one of those cases that not many states have created this. Some have, but if you create it, they will come kind of situation. And so this is maybe one of those situations where some of that might not yet exist specifically in this format, but if there's demand for it, then that might drive the development of this. But I would also say that per our current rule and the way our certificates lay out, I wouldn't necessarily align, and Maura will kick me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't necessarily align 3 semester hours to every one of those bullet points. I would look at that as a list of topics. And so there could be some double dipping that happens if you are in an administration program. Certainly
Yes.
some of those topics would have already been covered, and the certification desk would use that to meet that requirement.
Yes, I had my fingers crossed. That's what I was going to say, is that if some of these will overlap with somebody that might be in an administrative program, as somebody who has gone through principal classes and whatnot for administration, I can tell you that absolutely some of these are the classes that I have taken. And so somebody who doesn't want to go all the way through, but wants to take a few here and there, absolutely. And then on top of that, there could be that opportunity for creating something that's a little bit more streamlined, so to speak, or more aligned with these particular pieces for the endorsement.
There's a lot of work in different staffing models around like opportunity culture, but specifically comes to mind is ASU's alternate staffing model, Milken's TAP model. They all do the notion of elevating different roles from a teacher to a teacher mentor to a master teacher. And so there is, a lot of this aligns to that already. And I know ASU is doing that work and has training modules for team leads and these different roles. And so I think to that end as well, there's a lot of specifically organizations that already have things that are probably really close to this.
Thank you. Yes, I was just curious that if these were built upon like already established courses and a specific post-secondary institution, because when I Google these, they don't come up as being available anywhere. And so I don't want to create something and then nobody can attain it. And then as well, again, my concern is for our rural communities. If they're already short-staffed, in certain rural areas, somebody is the athletic director, the bus driver, and the PE teacher. And so now they're also trying to maybe get an endorsement to go somewhere else. They don't have these courses available in their rural area, nor does the district have the capacity to create a model like this. So that's why I was just curious if these are available somewhere now. Thank you.
Also, I'd like to point out, it's been a while since we had this discussion about micro-credentials. We considered that years ago. I was sitting over there. Micro-credentials in many respects are still the Wild West. There's several different organizations. They have different requirements around that. But the notion is competency-based learning for teachers, a really strong professional development model. But there was a really big push several years ago to say, credential, can this qualify you for certification and that type of thing? And the workaround at the time, because we were battling like procurement law and do you take Bloom boards, do you take Digital Promise, do you take AEAs, do you take what, and I know they contract out with some of those folks. And so that's the secret decoder ring in number 3 that the certification desk can help advise folks on is the equivalent competency-based credential. And so to your point again, Member Philpott, is there are teacher leadership micro-credentials out there or stackable credentials. And so there would be the opportunity for folks to leverage what they may have already done and participated in and meet some of these topics.
Thank you. Is there a question?
Yeah, I had
Member Thibault?
Yeah, I had a quick question about number 3, when you talked about micro-credentials and approval from other places. Does that include a school district that may offer these courses?
Chair Peasley and Member Thibault, it does not include necessarily a school district. There would be a process put in place for educational organizations to be able to, professional education organizations to be able to submit their courses for approval. So if an LEA were to submit their coursework to us, then they could submit their coursework. They would have to go through the approval process. So I would say possibly.
Possibly. Okay.
Possibly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Member Corporate?
Thank you, Chair Peasley. I applaud you guys for doing this. I think this is a missing element in the realities of K-12 education and school leadership and teachers transitioning into potential leaders and maybe spending an enormous amount of money and time and energy and getting a master's, and then they have their master's. They realize that there is no pathway for them personally, that they want to jump into that role of a leader. So I think it's a good transition. I would question that if, for example, as a practitioner, I would lead somebody that comes to me that says, I want to be a leader in your district. And we just did our district survey and there's a lot of them, but they don't necessarily want to be a principal. There's a dynamic of being a principal that some people want to stay below that radar. So but they may get into the field and they may say, you know what, I think I can go to the next level. We categorize it as student services position. So we have our own internal position which is very much like what we're describing here, helping in the classroom, helping with students, helping and so forth. So, but I would ask and maybe recommend that these courses, and I think you alluded to it, that these courses would then be able to be replicated or considered for their master's degree. So instead of going and getting your master's and potentially getting a teacher leadership endorsement, vice versa, you would start with this phase out of the classroom. You would get your teacher leadership endorsement and then make sure that that would transition into a ed leadership position, and make sure that the whatever coursework coincides, because I think it would be counterproductive if they did this endorsement and then none of those courses would transition into higher ed and ed leadership, which I'm sure there's connections to that. And my last question is, there's no practicum associated with this. There's coursework and philosophy and learning higher ed and getting together and philosophical coursework is one thing, but when you have to start actually analyzing data and educational trends, or when you actually have to start working with adults, that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of, can I do this or not? I can go get the coursework, I can do the philosophical part, but what about the practical? We've had practicums on all the other endorsements. Is there a practicum, or why did we not consider that as, like, you have to get a practicum for an ed leadership course or a certificate? So was there a reason behind us not having them do, or maybe that's part of the number 3?
I'll give Chair Peasley and Vice Chair Cooperage and members, I'll give her time to think a little bit too, because she worked with the stakeholders. I know the initial, when we first kind of broached this, it was trying to be a little bit lighter entry into this. And since it's an optional endorsement, again, we know LEAs everywhere are elevating teachers and giving responsibilities, teachers on assignment during their preps to, they have prowess in the classroom, and then we elevate them and put them in some coaching roles for technology, for math, whatever. So I think the initial thought was to not, like, who's going to judge that? If it's not IHE coursework, then what's the oversight of that? If they, think about, just because they have a practicum, is the outcome good? And do they fail that practicum? And so, all that caveat, I would say that initially, I don't even know that it made the radar of the ease of entry into this. They've already taken the step forward, put themselves, like micro-credentials, not the competency-based part, but the training part. They've put themselves out there, realizing that they wanted this, and then to kind of lean on the hiring, the LEAs who will be filling these positions to come up with the additional criteria. Like we envisioned a while ago that this could be a hiring preference. Certainly we're looking for this type of person who has these experiences, and also it'd be nice if they had this endorsement. And some of those hiring preferences could be, you have experience as a team lead, you've done PLCs, you've lead data parties, whatever that looks like. But I know there's been a lot more discussion since I was involved with it, so I'll hand that over to Jamie.
So to continue what Deputy Director Duplanty was saying, one of the things that came up in the stakeholder conversation is that oftentimes, we think that someone is a really great teacher, so they might make a really great mentor. And sometimes that's not the case, unfortunately, right? And so one of the things that we looked at for this teacher leader endorsement is that this could be an opportunity for our mentor teachers or our instructional coaches. Same thing. You're a really great teacher. You've been here forever. What you do in the classroom is amazing. We want to push you to an instructional coach position. You get them in that position and they don't do so hot. So that conversation lend itself within the stakeholder group of, if they have these additional courses and they are learning about adult learning versus student learning, there is a difference there. And while it's not necessarily practicum based, they have that coursework, and then from there, they're able to take that and hopefully run with it. So it was never really intended from the stakeholders' perspective to have a practicum in this one, but I understand where you're coming from. But we did have that discussion about, oftentimes it is somebody is the department chair, or somebody is the team lead or the grade level rep, or somebody, is the mentor teacher, or someone's going to lead a PD. But what really truly makes somebody a good teacher leader on campus? What are those characteristics? And then what do they need to have to be able to continue to push them forward? What are those topics that they need to have to be able to push forward, where they don't want to go in necessarily to go into administration? And so that's why we weren't really pushing for the practicum piece, because a lot of times too, somebody can still be a grade level rep and be considered that leader of the team, but not necessarily go for this particular endorsement, but still do a good job of reminding everybody, hey, we have this field trip coming up and turn this in, and here's this. But really, that teacher leader is someone who's going to help with those instructional practices, is going to mentor somebody. So there is that difference there. So I don't know if I answered the question or if that helps kind of differentiate between the two or not.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback, and I just look at it from a practitioner's perspective on how would I use this in our district, speaking from a superintendent's perspective. And I'm either going to pay somebody more for this endorsement, or I'm going to create a position for this endorsement. I already have grade level chairs. We pay that.
Right.
They're doing a good job. I already have, I can hire a literacy coach. I could hire, but example, we have student services, which is a position that helps with the plethora of things, which would be great for this. This would be perfect for that endorsement. But I would want them to practice and go through that step of actually applying some of this. And I think that's a missing element. I'm not saying we go back, but we might consider that in the future, that let's get your hands on things instead of just the philosophical thing, but maybe as a way to offset that some of that 15 hours, or I don't know, but I think we're good. I support moving forward with this, but I think that practical experience is what separates either I want to do this or I don't want to do this. And getting that practicum experience in this endorsement, I think could be a great addition to it. So, but thank you again for putting this forth. I think it is visionary, and I think it's good for Arizona.
Thank you, Member Corporate. I'm just thinking that this is another example of an endorsement that's available for districts to add their own requirements. You could add their own in the job description, could build in the requirement for having some practice, not just the endorsement. All right, we have two more questions. Member Sotomayor.
Thank you, Chair Priestley. I was just kind of curious, and actually Dr. Corporate kind of answered it just a little bit right now in his response. Was there any discussion about compensation and where this would fall in with compensation for this endorsement? Because so many times, and I've actually just heard it recently, where, oh, they get the title, they don't need the compensation. Well, they just spent money and time to get this. We're honoring their expertise, but are we, I know that's not our place to say, well, you should pay this much, every district, every LEA should pay that, but was there conversation around that and where that would possibly fit in?
Yes, Chair Peasley, Member Sotomayor, that was definitely a topic of conversation within the group. And while we can't say you should go and do, what our hope is that this allows an LEA the ability to either create certain positions that would require this. That way they could differentiate their pay structure for people, teachers with this endorsement. It could be used for hiring preferences for sure. That is the hope, because again, these are the teachers that are going out and seeking this endorsement. Most likely they are the ones that we are asking to do all the things, quote, and then they are that's justification for those varied roles, those responsibilities. And so therefore that would be justification for additional compensation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Horn.
I too compliment you for bringing this forward. Usually when something like this is brought forward to this committee, it's just introduced. We're not expected to vote on it. But I also understand your need of packaging all of the endorsements to the State Department, to the board itself. That being said, I'm concerned about several things. There's no mention in this list that all of this should lead to student learning. If you look at, I really like the Arizona Teacher Leader Professional Standards. I like the way that they talk about fostering, they talk about facilitating improvement rather than people who give constructive feedback think it's constructive, but the person receiving it doesn't necessarily believe that. However, if you look at how you facilitate improvement, that's different than constructive feedback. These also, like you said, are not courses, but that's exactly how they will be interpreted, because if you look at all the other endorsements, it is a list of skills and therefore courses that follow that. So rather than coursework, I would encourage it to be topics. And I would go back to using the language of the standards rather than the way that this is presented. It's very cut and dry. I'm going to improve you as a teacher. There's no student learning involved in any of this. I understand that that's our goal, but if you don't bring it forward and you don't put it in positive language, it will be taken very differently. I also believe there should be a practicum in this. If you have a mentor, a teacher, a coach, an instructional coach, they are supervised by somebody. That person can also supervise this teacher leader role. There's lots of ways to supervise this role, but I agree with Robbie and Kevin exactly that having coursework is not the only thing that's important. It's how do you apply it in the field. And I've had nationally board certified teachers as a mentor, and they were horrible. They got sick. They missed more than they were there because it was so stressful to them, and they were just as surprised as we were. So there are but that we found that out not in the coursework, not in the professional development we were offering. We found that out in the field, in the practicum situation. So I don't feel comfortable voting on this type of an endorsement with this kind of conversation going on, but that's just my opinion. I really thank the stakeholders. I don't know how you could possibly have brought, other than adding NAU to your group, I don't know how you could have brought a more eclectic, diverse group together to have this discussion. So I really commend all of those that attended the meeting and put their work into it. I just have some real concerns about the wording.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Horn. Are there any other questions? Anyone else online? Well, Member Horn has brought up a concern that she does not feel comfortable going forward with this. Is there anybody else on the committee that would like to see this go back and be reworked? Because if not, then I'm going to call for the question.
Chair Peasley, if I could get just one more point of clarification around that. On number 3, it says 15 clock hours of training or the equivalency-based credential. Would that training, 15 clock hours of training, could that be through a program considered a practicum-based? 15 hours I think is proper to my viewpoint. 15 hours of training could substitute for as part of that, or 50, however many credits they have to have, or they don't even have to have credits for this, do they? 15 semester hours. So could that be part of it? Is that blended somehow into that? Or I'm just trying to find a way to get them some practical experience in this. That's my greatest concern.
Chair Peasley, member, Vice Chair Cooperich. So the way that C reads and the rule would be interpreted is that 15 semester. So we're looking for the prerequisite certificate in A. we're looking for the 3 years full-time teaching to be verified. And then in C, we're looking at 15 semester hours or the comparable number of clock hours, if that were a board-approved program, to include the following topics. So again, I with due respect to Member Horn, that may be the way it's interpreted. However, if you had a class that was 6 semester hours and included all those topics, I don't know how that would work out. That would be check, and then we're still looking for more hours. And so if an Institute of Higher Ed or a board-approved program wanted to float a practicum as part of those required course hours, that would still meet the requirement. So the certification desk is not going to look for the practicum. They're going to look for the assurance of those topics being covered in either coursework or board-approved training.
Thank you. I think there's some creativity that could occur, and since this is an initial endorsement that we've never had before, I think what would be the cycle to come back and revisit it at some point and get feedback from the stakeholders that have this endorsement, as well as districts that have stakeholders that are using this endorsement. What would be the cycle for that? Would it be 3 years from now? I think just when would we have time to say, yeah, we think we need a little bit more added to this endorsement?
Chair Peasley, Vice Chair Cooperage, members, I think that your options today would be to table it and send it back. Again, the item is presentation, discussion, and possible action. So your action could be to table it and ask for relooking at this. You could call for the recommendation, which would then go through rulemaking process and could be modified again. Because once you hand it off to the board, it goes through rulemaking process, gets more stakeholder input, and could be modified and vetted through that process again. We could kind of add that to our notes here at State Board staff. If you voted to recommend that, it went through the process as is, to ask in a couple of years to come back with some data, how many people are using it, what's feedback on the requirements from various stakeholder groups, including administration, all the way down to the teachers who are actually obtaining it. That would be, that would rely upon people's memory to come back and do that. But since this is a standing committee of the state board, in rule, we could certainly, there's enough membership here to remember, like, hey, we did that. Can you bring that back?
I just think that this is an endorsement that was created because there are already so many teachers in the state of Arizona who are doing these things. They're already doing it. They're already doing the work. They're already in leadership roles. We're not addressing an anticipated need. I think because this is an endorsement and not a certificate, we already have folks in districts that are already doing this work, and they would have an opportunity now to get this endorsement. I don't feel so strongly about a practicum at this level, because even if the district set their own standards for experience in a role, which would be like as the practicum, even then, the districts have the choice to make this a permanent role, or this could be something temporary. It could be a temporary position at schools. I like having the districts have the option, and we've done that before on certificates and endorsements where we've left some of the qualifications, like this experience, up to the district to put that in place.
If I could clarify, Chair Peasley, so the requirements for obtaining this on your license, your certificate, would be what you approve. So if a district wanted a practicum, the certification desk has no way of knowing that, nor is that in rule. And so the person could still obtain this if they met the requirements that are up there. And then again, it would be a hiring practice if they're looking for the endorsement and some sort of experience, unless we went back and considered the practicum and added that to language.
How does that work for a compromise then? That the districts would be, would then be the ones in charge, the schools, not just charters as well, of setting their own, setting the criteria for whatever positions that they decide to have when they would put this, if they decide to put this endorsement as a requirement. Is that something we could live with? Just because you have a certificate doesn't mean you're gonna get hired.
It's a
I mean, yeah, it's a hiring practice. I mean, I've got, with my certificates, if I just had a I don't, but if I only had a cross-categorical, special ed certificate, a district could say, no, you're not qualified to teach a multiply disabled classroom or a classroom of students with more intensive needs, emotional disability. You don't have that in your experience. That's wasn't part of your practicum. So no, we're not going to hire you. So I think it could be the same if we put that hiring practice.
If I may, I think that puts I think that puts the administrator, the hiring administrator in a difficult position, because then the teacher is going to say to them, I have this certificate. The Arizona Board of Education says that it's a valid certificate. I've been doing the work, so why wouldn't you accept this with or without the practicum? So once you start putting hiring, it's just up to the individual district.
Member Sotomayor?
Now, Member Horn, I would just address that in hiring practice. Great, this got you the interview. This got you in the door. Absolutely. I would look at that and go, yep, you qualified to be in the interview. And then I would vet that out through the interview process of what are your, like Chair Peasley was saying, what are your experiences? And like, oh, you know what? I'm really looking for someone that has self-contained experience. And I'm sorry, you don't have it. You have the endorsement, you have those things, but you didn't have the experience I'm looking for. And then it allows me that opportunity as the hiring, entity to say, what are the needs? Because every school is going to be a little bit different. This just kind of gives you that idea of that they have this experience. They have the desire. Now, can I give them that experience that they'd want?
Okay. Then at this point, I am going to call for the question. Is there a motion to recommend the proposed Rule R72615V teacher leader endorsement?
So moved.
So moved by Member Sotomayor. Is there a second? There's not a second. Therefore, we're going to send this back. Committee is going to send this back to the department for further consideration. Thank you very much. The next item, our last item, is the summary of current events, future meeting dates, and items for future agendas. Deputy Director Duplanting.
I'll be brief to value your time since we're already over, and I thank you so much for your work. I probably am considering to take the current rule package with all of the current recommendations and to still move that forward to December since it is quite lengthy. That will give the department time and us time to take your input today and work on the teacher leader, and we'll kind of bounce that around staff as to the best proposal. But we did so much work on endorsements that it's quite large, and it would be good to get the ball rolling on that. The rulemaking process, if the board were to open it in December, is at least a 2-month process. The board opens it on one meeting. Then there's at least a public hearing between that and 2 months out. On the second month, there's an update, and on the third month, there'll have been the public hearing, time for public comment, and then the board will may choose to close the rule, thus adopting it, and which makes it effective immediately thereafter. So that's kind of the plan. Future meetings, my intention is to try to fill our empty seats. We have 2 or 3 seats open, one of which is kind of state superintendent, our charter school board member, and I forget what the third one is, but we'll try to get those filled. So maybe we're coming back maybe around February at the earliest, I would say. There's some things that the field's asking for around CTE certification and professional knowledge exams, as well as some other technical issues and some other certificates. And then we'll see what the legislation this year brings. We'll be in touch, but nothing is on the books currently. And we'll just kind of reach out as we've got enough stuff to hold a meeting. So thank you so much for making these. It's been a long haul since June. New members came on, members left, but it was a lot of great work, and I really appreciate it. And board staff does, and we're excited to move that forward to the board.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for we have guests today. Thank you very much for coming and being interested in our process. All the members, we thank you for all of your attention to the details as always. We have Thanksgiving and the holiday season coming up. Everybody be safe, be happy, good travels, and take care, and we'll see you next year. The meeting is adjourned at